Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be looking at You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. And I got to tell you, full disclosure, I always kind of like rolled my eyes at self-help stuff. Like all that good vibes only talk felt a bit much, you know? But Sincero, she's different.
Yeah.
Like she's funny and she's real and she gets that growing and changing isn't always like sunshine and rainbows. So we're going to unpack some seriously cool ideas from this book. And they might just change how you see the world and yourself.
I think one of the things that makes this book so different is it's not your typical self-help book.
Yeah.
You know, like Sincero really dives into the nitty-gritty of like why we get in our own way and how what we believe shapes like what happens to us. And she gives you actual steps to take to start living a life that feels like you.
Totally. So let's dive into one of like the most fascinating concepts she talks about. This idea of the subconscious blueprint. It's like this idea that all of our childhood experiences, right? Like all those messages we get from our families and from society create these beliefs that are deep down inside us. And those beliefs can either help us like totally soar or they can hold us back.
It's not even just about the messages themselves, but like how our little kid brains interpret them, right? So like picture a kid whose parent is always stressing about money. So that kid might unconsciously connect money with like worry and stress.
Right. And that connection can stick around into adulthood, even if now they consciously want to be wealthy.
So they could be like working hard, making like smart money choices, but they still find themselves struggling. It's almost like their subconscious is working against them.
Exactly.
I think Sincero uses this example of a woman who desperately wanted a loving partner,
Right.
but she kept picking guys who were emotionally unavailable. Yeah, exactly. And she wanted intimacy, you know, but she might have like subconsciously connected closeness with pain or abandonment just based on things that happened early in her life.
That's where it gets really interesting, right?
Right.
Because it makes you think, like, are there things that you've always wanted,
Right.
but you just never seem to achieve? Could there be a subconscious belief that's like sabotaging your efforts? That's a really powerful question.
And she doesn't just leave us with that, right? She gives us tools to work with that.
Yeah.
And one of those tools is the idea of raising your frequency.
Yeah. The radio analogy. I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's so good.
She's basically saying you can't attract success on the wrong frequency. It's like trying to get a rock station when your dial is set to classical music. You're just not going to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's not just about working hard or taking action.
Right.
It's not enough to just try really hard.
Yeah.
You have to cultivate a mindset that will attract the things you want. It's about aligning your energy with your actions.
So how do we raise our frequency? What does that even mean, like practically speaking?
Well, it starts with being aware of our thoughts and feelings. We're always focusing on the negative, on like what we don't have and what we're afraid of. That's the energy we're putting out there. And that's likely what we're going to get back. It's about shifting to a more positive, like abundant mindset.
I can already hear some of our listeners being like, oh, here comes that good vibes only stuff. But Sincero's not saying we should pretend everything is perfect or ignore challenges. It's more about consciously choosing to focus on the good, to be grateful, and to believe in our potential. And that kind of leads us to another big idea in the book, the importance of living in the present moment.
Totally.
Oh, this is where Sincero's humor really shines. Remember the part about pigeon pose?
Yes.
She's talking about like struggling to quiet her mind while she's like contorting herself into that yoga pose. It's so relatable. It perfectly captures that like constant chatter in our heads that pulls us away from actually like experiencing right now.
Yeah, and she really believes that dwelling on the past or worrying about the future robs us of the potential of like right now, you know? Think about how kids and animals experience the world. They're totally present, fully in whatever they're doing.
Like when a dog greets its owner after they've been gone for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
It's pure joy, pure presence, no baggage, no worries about what might happen next.
Totally. She thinks we could learn a lot from that. It's about tuning into our senses, appreciating the little things, and letting go of all the mental clutter that keeps us from seeing how awesome now is.
Easier said than done, right? But definitely something to work on. And speaking of things that might be holding us back, let's talk about the big snooze. This is one of my favorite parts of the book.
The big snooze.
Or BS, as Sincero calls it.
Yeah.
It's that part of us that's driven by fear-limiting beliefs and the need for approval from other people. It's like that voice in our head that says, you're not good enough, or what if you fail?
It's like a grumpy roommate that wants to keep us in our comfort zone, even if that comfort zone isn't even that comfortable.
And Sincero points out how other people's negativity can feed our own big snooze. Remember the story about Shirley who decides to quit her corporate job to open a nail salon?
Yeah.
She's so excited about her dream.
Right. And then she gets hit with all these doubts and warnings from people who are supposedly trying to help her. What if you fail? It's too risky. Think about your family. It's classic big snooze stuff, even when it sounds like concern.
It really makes you think about how many times we've let other people's fears affect our own choices. It's a reminder to be careful about whose opinions we let influence us.
For sure. It's about knowing the difference between helpful feedback and just projections from people who might be stuck in their own big snooze.
Totally. And the cool thing is that she doesn't just point out the problem. She gives us actual tips on how to get rid of those limiting beliefs.
It's like she's saying, okay, we found the BS. Now let's clean it up so we can make room for awesome new stuff.
And that process isn't always fun. It can feel like the universe is testing us, throwing obstacles in our path to see if we're serious about changing. She tells this crazy story about a client who had all these setbacks after quitting his job to start a business. Like flat tires, car accidents, even getting hit by a bus. Talk about the big snooze throwing a tantrum.
Right. It can feel like that.
Yeah.
But those challenges often show up when we're about to make a breakthrough. They test how badly we want it and push us to go beyond our comfort zone. It's like that saying, the biggest battles are fought in the quiet of your own soul.
So deep. But it's true. And it makes you think that sometimes those setbacks are actually signs we're on the right path. That it's just the big snooze trying to hold us back. So how do we deal with those challenges? What can we actually do?
Well, that's where self-love comes in.
Ah, self-love. That's a big one. Sincero's take on self-love is really refreshing. It's not just about bubble baths and positive affirmations, though those can be nice. It's about accepting who we are, like totally accepting every part of ourselves.
Yeah. She talks about appreciating what makes us unique, forgiving ourselves for our mistakes, and not comparing ourselves to other people.
I love the story about her nephew with his perfect posture.
Oh.
It's this adorable example of how kids naturally have self-love. They're not worried about what others think. They just are.
It's a good reminder that we all have that inside us. Yeah. We just have to find it again. Sometimes it feels like we lose that confidence as we get older. We start caring too much about what others think, and fear stops us from expressing who we really are.
I remember when I was a teenager, I was so scared to share my writing. I was terrified of being judged. It took me forever to get over that fear and start sharing my work.
Yeah, and in those situations, Sincero's message is so helpful. She's like, stop wasting your time worrying about what other people think. Ask yourself, is this something I want? Will it move me forward? Am I hurting anyone? And if the answer is yes, yes and no, then go for it. Don't let fear stop you.
Those are great questions. They shift our focus from what other people think to what feels right for us. And that's where real confidence comes from. It's about trusting our gut and taking action even when it's scary. Speaking of taking action, let's talk about that incredible story about the loincloth man.
Oh yeah, the loincloth man.
So good. So Sincero meets this guy who's living off the grid in a canyon.
Totally off the grid.
Completely unapologetic about his choices.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's wearing a loincloth. But what struck her was his confidence. Like, he was so comfortable with who he was.
Total self-acceptance.
It's like he was saying, this is me, take it or leave it. And there's something so freeing about that.
Right.
It reminds us that we can choose how we want to live, no matter what society says.
And it connects to her advice about not getting hung up on finding the one true calling. You know, sometimes it's more about doing what lights you up, even if it doesn't fit in a box. It's about being you and trusting that your path will unfold perfectly.
And sometimes that path leads to unexpected places, like meeting a guy in a loincloth in a canyon.
Exactly. It's about the journey. And speaking of finding our path, let's talk about gratitude. I love how she contrasts those strict phone answering rules from her childhood with how important gratitude is to her now.
Yeah, it's a funny story. But it shows how much gratitude means to Sinceros. And she's not just talking about saying thank you when someone does something nice. She's talking about like a deeper appreciation for all the good stuff, even the little things.
Yeah, and she believes that gratitude actually strengthens our connection to what she calls source energy.
Source energy. Tell me more about that.
It's like this universal energy that fuels everything good. Creation abundance, and when we're grateful, we open ourselves up to receive more of that good stuff.
So gratitude is like a magnet that attracts more things to be grateful for.
Totally. And it also makes us more trusting. It's about believing the universe has our back, even when we can't see the whole picture. It's about believing in what's possible, even if we don't have all the answers yet.
Okay, I'm feeling the gratitude vibes already.
Yeah.
Any practical tips for how to be more grateful every day?
She suggests that when something happens, even if it seems bad at first, you ask yourself, this is good because. and then try to find the upside.
Yeah. It's like making lemonade out of lemons. Makes you look for the good even when things are tough. Like, remember her example of getting a flat tire when you're with your kids?
Oh yeah, in the moment, it's super annoying and inconvenient. But if you think, this is good because, you might realize it's a chance to teach your kids how to change a tire, or you get to connect with them in a new way. It becomes a shared experience, a memory you can laugh about later.
It's like finding those little moments of grace, even
Yeah.
when things are chaotic. So gratitude helps us connect with this source energy. It helps us trust more, and it helps us see the good in everything. What's not to love?
Exactly. And speaking of challenges, let's talk about something that can be really tough, but ultimately so freeing. Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Forgiveness is hard, especially when someone's really hurt you.
It is. But she makes a really strong case for why forgiveness is good for us.
It's easy to get stuck in that anger and blame and wanting revenge.
Right, but she says holding on to that is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We're the ones who suffer when we don't forgive.
So it's not about saying what they did was okay or letting them off the hook. It's about freeing ourselves from all that heavy emotional baggage.
Exactly. And she gives some practical advice on how to do that. Like, one thing she says is to focus on what you can learn from the situation. Instead of thinking about the hurt, ask, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger and wiser?
It's about shifting from blame to growth. And that's powerful. I also like her point about taking the other person out of the equation when you're trying to forgive.
Yeah. She uses that example of two employees who miss work. One's hungover and the other has a family emergency. But the result for you is the same. You're short-staffed.
Right. We might understand the one with the family emergency more, but it doesn't change the situation. We still have to deal with the consequences. Her point is that we can choose to be compassionate and understanding even when it's hard.
And that choice is where our power is. We always have a choice in how we react to things. We can choose anger or we can choose compassion. And in the end, compassion is what brings us peace and freedom.
Okay, so we've talked about the subconscious blueprint, raising our frequency, living in the moment, the big snooze, self-love, forgiveness, and the power of gratitude.
It's amazing how all these things connect, right?
It's all about realizing that we have way more power than we think. It's about taking charge of our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions,
Yeah.
and creating a life that feels like us.
About becoming the badass we were always meant to be.
Totally. And on that note, I think it's a good place to pause for now and let all this sink in. We'll be back soon to explore even more amazing stuff from Jem.
You are a badass. Stay tuned.
Yes, so much more to come. Welcome back. So glad you're with us again. I hope you had a chance to process all that awesome stuff we talked about in the last part, because we're diving right back into You Are a Badass and all the amazing advice that Jen Sincero has to offer.
I'm so ready for more. This book is jam-packed with practical advice and really makes you think. And speaking of practical advice, let's talk about money. It's one of those topics that can be super loaded, right?
Totally. Our
Right.
relationship with money is often really tied to our past experiences and what we believe. Yeah, for sure.
And those beliefs can either help us attract more abundance or keep us stuck.
I love that Sincero encourages us to get real about our money stuff, like not pretending everything is fine or ignoring those financial challenges, but really acknowledging where we're at and then choosing to create something different.
Exactly.
Hmm.
She says money is energy, and like all energy, it needs to flow.
Okay, I like that.
And one of the biggest things that blocks that flow is our own beliefs about money. Like maybe we think we don't deserve wealth, or that money is evil, or that rich people are all greedy. These kinds of beliefs can create this resistance to having more money.
It's like we're putting up these walls that stop money from coming to us.
Exactly. And Sincero is all about breaking down those walls and having a more open mindset about money.
I love it. So how do we do that?
Well, she talks about what she calls the rules of wealth consciousness.
Okay.
And one of the rules is to get clear on where you're at financially and emotionally. It's about understanding your money situation right now and acknowledging any negative beliefs you have that might be holding you back.
And then it's about figuring out where you want to be. Like, what does financial abundance look like to you? What would you do if money wasn't an issue? Create a vision that excites you and pulls you forward.
And then, of course, taking action.
Right, because it's not just about thinking positive thoughts.
Exactly. It's about doing things that support your goals.
And sometimes those actions can feel scary, like investing in yourself or starting a business or asking for a raise.
Oh, for sure.
But Sincero's like, lean into that discomfort.
Yeah.
Trust that you can create the financial reality you want.
And remember, done is better than perfect. It's about taking those imperfect steps, even if you don't have everything figured out.
And celebrating the wins along the way, no matter how small.
Totally. Those small wins give you momentum and build your confidence.
Okay, now let's talk about something that might sound kind of weird when we're talking about creating the life we want. Surrender.
Surrender.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right? We're all about taking action, making big choices, and now we're supposed to surrender.
It does seem like a contradiction. But what she means is that surrender isn't about giving up or being passive. It's more about letting go of control and trusting that the universe has a plan, even when we can't see it all yet. It's about not trying to micromanage every detail and allowing things to unfold naturally.
I love that.
She makes this analogy about inviting people to a party.
Okay.
When you're desperate for people to come, it kind of gives off this needy vibe that actually pushes people away.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're relaxed and confident, you create this energy that attracts people.
That makes so much sense. It's like when we try too hard to make something happen, we're actually blocking it. But when we let go and trust the process, we open ourselves up to receiving in ways we never imagined.
Exactly. And that requires faith.
Yeah.
Faith in yourself, faith in the universe, faith in those forces that are working for you, even when you can't see them.
It's about believing that everything is happening for a reason, even when it doesn't feel like it. That's a powerful idea. It reminds me of when I was trying to manifest a writing retreat. Everything was going wrong. I had to keep reminding myself to surrender, to trust that the universe had a plan.
And did it work out?
It totally did. The retreat ended up being even better than I could have planned. It was like all those challenges were just part of the journey, leading me to the perfect destination.
It's like we're co-creating with the universe, allowing it to guide us to our highest potential.
Yeah.
So we've talked about money and surrender and taking action. Now let's talk about procrastination. It's something we all deal with, right?
Yes, procrastination is the worst.
But Sincero has some great advice on how to overcome it.
Tell me everything.
She doesn't sugarcoat it. She calls it what it is. Self-sabotage. It's that gap between wanting something and actually making it happen. And usually it's because of fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, all kinds of fear.
So how do we break free from that procrastination trap?
Her advice is simple but powerful. If you want something, shut up and do it.
I love that.
It's about stopping the overthinking and the planning and just taking those first steps, even if they're messy and imperfect.
Sometimes it's hard to take that first step, though.
I know. But she also says to break down big goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. Because sometimes when a goal feels too huge, it can be paralyzing.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly. Focus on what you can do today to move yourself closer to your goal. And then just keep doing that.
I like that. What else?
She also suggests setting deadlines, having someone hold you accountable, even making bets with people to stay motivated.
I love the idea of making a bet with someone who will really hold you accountable.
You need someone who's not afraid to call you out.
And maybe even make fun of you a little bit if you don't follow through.
Exactly. It's about using whatever works to get yourself moving.
So true. So we've talked about money and surrender and procrastination. Wow, this book is packed with goodness.
It is. And there's still more to come. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive where we'll uncover even more amazing insights from You Are a Badass.
All right, we are back for the final part of our deep dive into You Are a Badass.
I know.
I don't know about you, but my brain is like overflowing with all these awesome ideas we've been talking about.
You too.
It's like Sincero has given us this whole new way of looking at life and creating what we want.
Totally. It's about like changing our perspective, getting rid of those old limiting beliefs, and really stepping into our power.
And speaking of power, let's talk about relationships. They can be a big source of stress for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, relationships. It's like we love them, we need them, but they can also be so complicated.
Sincero has some really great advice about relationships, and as always, it's super honest and practical.
One thing she talks about is taking responsibility for our own happiness.
Mm.
You know, it's so easy to fall into that trap of expecting our partner to make us happy.
Right, like they're supposed to complete us or something.
Exactly. But she reminds us that no one else can actually make us happy.
It's like we've all been sold this fairy tale of finding the one, and then all our problems will magically disappear.
Right. But Sincero's like, wake up. A good relationship starts with the good relationship with yourself.
It's about loving and accepting ourselves first, so we can show up in our relationships as whole people.
And when we're whole, we attract other whole people.
Right.
When we have self-love and confidence, we're more likely to attract partners who are also secure and know who they are.
Makes sense. And she also talks about setting boundaries in relationships.
Oh yeah, boundaries are huge.
It's about knowing what you're okay with and what you're not okay with, and being able to communicate that clearly.
Boundaries aren't about controlling the other person. It's more about protecting yourself and your energy.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels respected and supported, and where you can both be yourselves. And sometimes that means having tough conversations and calling each other out.
Totally. Healthy relationships require honesty.
And speaking of calling people out, Sincero talks about those people who just like really push our buttons.
Ugh, yeah, we all have those people.
The ones who trigger all our insecurities and make us act in ways we're not proud of.
Sincero has this really cool idea about these kinds of relationships.
Hmm.
She calls it millions of mirrors.
Millions of mirrors. What's that?
Basically, she believes that the people who annoy us the most are actually showing us something about ourselves.
Whoa, that's deep.
Like the universe is using those people as mirrors to highlight the stuff we need to work on.
So instead of blaming them, we should be asking ourselves, what is this person triggering in me? What can I learn from this?
Exactly. It's a chance to grow and evolve. Of course, sometimes those people are just annoying.
Yeah, sometimes people are just jerks.
And Sincero doesn't say we have to put up with that. She talks about setting boundaries and sometimes even walking away from relationships that are toxic.
It's about knowing your worth and not letting people treat you badly.
For sure. So before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to one of the biggest themes in the book, the power of believing in what you can't see. Yeah, she really challenges us to think outside the box with that one. We're so used to only believing in what we can see and touch.
But she's saying there's so much more to life than that. It's about trusting that our thoughts and beliefs have a huge impact on our experiences.
If we want to change our lives, we got to start by changing our thinking.
I love how she talks about acting as if our dreams have already come true.
Yeah, even if it feels a little silly.
It's about shifting your energy to match what you want to create, like making it feel real.
I love that example she uses about wanting to hang out by the pool with the president.
Oh, yeah. She's like, imagine you're there. What are you wearing? What are you talking about?
It's about feeling it as if it's already happening.
And then taking inspired action.
Yes. It's not just about working hard. It's about doing things that feel aligned with your soul's purpose.
Sincero's like, you are capable of amazing things. Get out of your own way and trust the process.
And she leaves us with this powerful question. Why not?
Why not? It's a challenge to let go of those limiting beliefs and step outside our comfort zones.
To create a life that's truly extraordinary.
Why not indeed? This deep dive has been incredible. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored all the wisdom and awesomeness of You Are a Badass.
It's been a wild ride. And remember, being a badass is a journey. It's about embracing the ups and downs, learning from your mistakes, and never giving up on your dreams.
So go out there, embrace your inner badass, and create a life that is as amazing as you are.